Hello there. I wanted to go over some terminology and explanations of some examples before we dig into a new vocal technique series that I'll be posting in the near future. But we're going to be talking about some things, and I know that different students and singers hear something and it means something different to them than others. So I want to be very careful, as vocal health and vocal technique have to be our first concern so that we're singing in a healthy manner. Some things don't need explanation, like posture, all of that we're going to unpack. However, in the video series, I will use some terms such as lifting the rib cage. Some people think of the word as lifting like this, lifting up, and I'm talking about a nice suspended open rib cage with no tension in the body. So any terms you hear like lifting, I don't mean this kind of lifting. I'm talking about a tension-free lift or suspension in that manner. We're also going to be talking about the vocal tract. So that's going to cover everything from the pharyngeal area back in here all the way down to the bottom of the larynx. So when we're talking about the vocal tract, or you'll hear me say widen the vocal tract, that's what I'm talking about. Which leads me to this next thing. We will be discussing at length retraction versus constriction in the vocal tract. We're specifically talking about retraction of the false vocal folds, which lie right above your true vocal folds. So here's an example of a constricted sound in belt. You can hear that that's constricted and tight versus a speech level neutral versus retracted. So I can go constricted, neutral, retracted, neutral, constricted. So you want to watch out for that. Like anytime you start to find yourself getting that constricted type feeling, that's when you want to employ retraction, which is what we're going to be going over a lot. You also might see me do like this a little bit. That's just a reminder to open up and get those false vocal folds retracted. So if I have hey, that's constricted. Hey, speech level. Hey, very speech level. More retracted. Hey. So you hear the difference in those three different qualities, with of course this one being incorrect. This one more neutral, where we speak every day. And this one feels like we could sing for days and days and days, and we have very low vocal effort when we have that retraction going on. You'll hear me talk a lot about the upcoming ABCs. A is what I refer to as the symptom of what's going on. B is the problem, what's causing the symptom, and C is the cure. So when you hear me talking about that, please don't think that I mean C, this is the only cure or the only way to explain this in the world. Of course not. There are experts out there who have different ways of explaining things. So perhaps you may be studying voice with a teacher who explains things a different way. Doesn't mean that it's fundamentally wrong. So when I use the word cure, I don't mean that this is the one and only cure. So just keep that in mind. When we're talking about a yawn, getting the open space, I do not mean this kind of a yawn. Watch my larynx. I do not mean shoving the larynx down. I'm talking about the onset of a yawn, where the raised soft palate back here in the back goes up, but this is not pressed down. Sometimes when people think, oh, I need to get all the space they can, they make the space in the back of the throat like this, when really what we need is this. We need the top lifted up a bit and the tongue nice and flat and low. The raised tongue can really get us in trouble. When I talk about the negotiation of the space and the vowel, I'm talking about, I may be singing on a he up here. He might be the sound or the vowel he, but do you see how that's constricted? So negotiation of that space would me be saying hey in the back, hey, and then morph it. Hey! This place right I'm in right now sounds more like a true he. So, ha! Gets it open in the back and the tongue flat. Ha! Then morphing to an E with the front of the face, the mouth. Hey! Okay, so that's what I'll mean by that. you'll hear me referring a lot to A is the symptom, B is the problem, C is the cure. So when we start talking about it in terms of that openness and negotiating the sound, that cure might look different on different folks depending on how you're making the vowel and whatever baggage you might be bringing into the vocal session. So, and by baggage, I mean we all have habits. So maybe you're bringing a habit into it that could change the way that the cure works for you. When we're talking about inhaling the letter G, I do not mean like that. I mean to plug your ears and try to inhale. And you shouldn't hear a big loud rush of air coming past. So you can try that in advance to prepare yourself for the sessions to make sure that you're not hearing a lot of breath on that, okay? And we don't want to hear a big glottal, just a slight and even quieter, okay? And when I'm talking about twang, you'll hear me say that the twang is more forward. So if I'm only twang, I would go, hey. Now we don't want to sing like that, obviously in public, but don't be afraid to make ugly sounds throughout this series as you're singing with me. And we would never want to do that. However, we do want to feel it right here to get the resonance. That twang is placed here so that we're not putting the pressure or the weight in the throat. We want to get it totally out of the throat. So when you hear me talk about twang, that's what I mean by that. Okay, so when we're talking about fake belt or power mix or these kinds of things, vocal pedagogues from all over have different terminology that they want to use for this. Totally okay, of course. What I'm meaning by it is it's a part of our voice where we don't want a belt, that we're approaching in a different way, and we want it to fit in the pocket with what we're doing with other things. When I say in the pocket, I'm meaning that we don't want the voice to suddenly sound like it's just flipped out of the registration path that we're on. So when we're using that fake belt, that's sort of what we're talking about there. An example of that would be, hey, belt versus fake, hey. You can hear a difference between those two. So that's what I mean there. So I hope that all of these little explanations will help you as you embark on this little journey with me. Thanks so much.